Good afternoon. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This afternoon, I'm really thrilled and honored to have with you as my guest, Sasha Rao, who's a partner at Maynard Nexson. Sasha, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Richard. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you as well. So now you have a little bit more of an unusual background. You were a physics major in college. Tell me a little bit about how you chose that as your major. Was physics something you always wanted to be as a kid?
No, actually, that's a great question. I wanted to be an engineer, but I was coming in as a foreign student from India, and Randolph-Macon was a liberal arts school. So the only majors available were physics, chemistry, and biology. So I picked the subject closest to electrical engineering. So that's
I see. I see. So was your plan to become an electrical engineer after graduation?
Yes, it was.
And so I assume that I gather that those plans got derailed. Tell me how that happened.
So I was chosen in my junior year of college for a National Science Foundation fellowship. I did one summer in a physics lab doing the same experiment over and over again. And that was enough to help me decide that maybe I needed to find a path somewhere else.
What was that experiment?
It was about polymers and how they would react. So it was about basically Teflon polymers. And in science, it's very important to have reproducibility of an experimental result. And I thought it was really boring that I'd have the same thing over and over again.
So that ended your physics career, shall we say?
Yes, physics and engineering, actually.
Oh, interesting. Well, then how did you decide to pick law? That doesn't seem like the necessarily the next most logical choice.
No, it doesn't. But I found out about intellectual property law in my junior year in college. And so I researched all the top law schools and decided I'm going to apply to be admitted to law school and then hopefully become an intellectual property lawyer.
Oh, I see. Did someone inspire you to do that? Anyone suggest that? How did you come across this career?
It was just by research. There was nobody in my family who was a lawyer. Most people were engineers or doctors. So it was sort of like an outside and unexpected choice by me.
Yeah. Well, how did you like law school when you got there? It must have been very different, obviously, than being a physics student.
Yes, it was very different because the grading curve at NYU was, pretty much everybody got a B unless you were outstanding. So getting good grades was very difficult. So law was difficult that way. But it was also the kind of logic you studied was very different than one might do in, say, a philosophy class or a math equation.
Yeah. Well, how did you like it? Was it hard for you to adjust? You liked it right away?
I liked it a lot because once I figured out the grading curve, I knew that I'd have to be really stupid not to get a B. So I decided to ease back on my studies and enjoy New York City a little more. And it was a wonderful experience.
And so how did you like, obviously you enjoyed being an IP litigator. Is that what you ended up, it sounds like you followed that path straight through as you had planned.
Yes, I did. So when in law school, I learned about the top IP firms. I applied to a bunch of them. I got into Fish and Neve in New York. And at Fish and Neve, I did high stakes patent litigation day in and day out.
And what kind of technologies have you worked in over the years? I mean, I assume you've worked on a lot of stuff, but give me a feel for sort of the range of technologies you've worked on.
From potato chips to semiconductor chips, from biotechnology to rudimentary chemicals, and just electronics, computers, internet, just the whole gamut.
Yeah. What do you think the most complicated technology you've worked on, you say?
I think some of that biotechnology I worked on was pretty complicated
Mm,
because these are very large molecules and it's
mm,
really hard to predict
mm.
what's going to happen. And having expert testimony on those topics was quite difficult.
Do you enjoy the biotech work more than say, the electronics work, or you like them both the same?
I think what I like is that I have different types of subject matter.
Huh.
So it's hard to uh, get bored if you have so many different challenges to deal with. So while patent infringement lawsuits are the same in the sense that someone is asserting a patent right that has been infringed and you're either on the patentee side or on the accused infringer side, the nature of the patent and the technology that covers changes the whole nature of the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what makes it interesting. So I think having different subject matters, like lately in California, I do a lot of tech,
Mm-hmm.
computers, electronics, and the like.
Now, a lot of engineers, end up becoming patent prosecutors, as you obviously know. Did you know right away that you were going to be a litigator? Did you dabble at all in any parts of prosecution?
I didn't know right away. That's a great question. I started, as I said, at Fish and Eve, and I also did some prosecution work there. I did some interferences work, which is pretty esoteric and no longer necessary because nobody does it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And did re-examinations. So it was a full gamut of all the problems you could face if you had intellectual property. But I ended up gravitating more towards strategic things. Patent litigation is very strategic, as is trying to figure out how to best protect a product. So over time, I have developed more of a mixed practice of litigation and transactional work. But I would say the transactional work I do is much more strategic, figuring out what kind of assets to protect, how, what kind of agreements to put in place, how to approach a competitor about something.
Do you enjoy the litigation work more than the transactional, or how do you compare those two on your list?
I think what I enjoy is helping clients. So I think I've had that rush of a trial and the win. That's amazing. Clients love that. I've also enjoyed getting a major deal done and then the client being really happy because now they can pursue a new product line. So I think what makes the job very fulfilling, ultimately we are a client service business.
Yeah.
And that means you need clients to feel like they were important enough for you to provide excellent client service. And if you aim for that, I think you get a very fulfilling professional life. If you don't like being in the service business, being a lawyer is very difficult.
For sure. Well, you've obviously had a very successful practice as a, private practice lawyer. Have you ever thought about going in-house? Is that something you ever thought you would try? Obviously, you work with a lot of clients that have in-house lawyers. Is that something that you thought you'd ever give a shot at some point in the future?
I have thought about it over the years on more than one occasion. Usually it's prompted when one of the clients calls me and says, how about you come in-house and work with us? Here's the opportunity. And I have considered that. I'll be honest with you. It's not been something I didn't consider because as a professional, you owe it to yourself to consider all the good opportunities that come your way.
Sure.
But I've always recognized that perhaps my interest in a lot of different things and different kinds of technologies, different kinds of legal problems are going to be much more confined working for a client because they're necessarily in a small industry or a relatively small industry compared to the whole world.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, do you ever reflect on how fortunate that you stumbled onto this career path, even though that was not your original plans? Do you ever kind of think about that and reflect on it?
All the time. I mean, I feel fortunate every day that I have the job that I do. I enjoy it. I enjoy being in private practice. I enjoy working with my clients. They are some of my best friends in the world. And if any of my clients are listening, I love you unconditionally.
Well, you should thank the person that set up that National Science Foundation experiment for you, because if it weren't for that, you wouldn't be doing this profession.
That's true, actually. I never thought about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Sasha, it's been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. You have such an interesting background, and I really appreciate your taking the time to share it with me.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate talking to you, and I wish you the best.
You as well. This is Richard Hsu and Sasha Rao. Thanks.